Welcome to Talmudic Treasures. Today we're learning Yevamot, page 76, which discusses the story of King Shaul, the very first king of Israel. When he encountered David, who of course was famous for killing the Philistine Goliath, he asked, who exactly is this person? And the reason why he was asking is not because he didn't have an idea who he was, but he was actually quite concerned about his greatness, to the point that maybe he will one day become the next king and he'll be overthrown. What really confused Shaul is we know that Shaul was physically very, very tall. In fact, it says that he was heads and shoulders taller than the average man. Now, because of that, David, who was about to fight, he was a shepherd. He didn't have armor. So actually he took the armor from Shaul himself. And something which was quite striking is no one should really be able to fit this body armor on them if it belongs to a man who is so much taller than you. But miraculously, somehow, it fit. And just like if the suit fits or if the shoe fits, this obviously got Shaul quite concerned that he could perhaps also, this may be alluding that he'll end up taking over the throne, taking over the position. And one of the people there by the name of Doeg, also known as Doeg Ammoni, he said, don't be so concerned. You're worried where he's from. If he has the proper background to be the king, he may not even be fit to marry a typical Jewish woman, because look at his background. Well, if you go back not too many generations, we find that there is a woman by the name of Ruth, and Ruth married Boaz. Now, Ruth and Boaz had a child, Oved, who in turn had a child, Yishai or Jesse, eventually having David. So we see that David's relative is from Moab. And the Torah says that someone who is related to a Moabite, namely David, is not even allowed to marry into the Kahal Hashem, is not allowed to get married into a regular marriage. So don't worry about him becoming the next king. He can't even get married. So on this, we find that Avner and Amasa also responded and said, no, you're not reading the verse correctly. The only prohibition is for a Jewish woman is not allowed to marry someone from Ammon or Moab. But a Jewish man, like Boaz, was allowed to marry a woman from Moab or from Ammon. And that's what he did. He married a Moabite woman, namely Ruth, but that was allowed. And the reason for this, what's the difference between a man and a woman, is explicitly mentioned in the verses. Many years back, we were traveling through these cities, and they did not provide food. Now, it was the men who were in charge of the supplies of the food in Ammon and Moab, and they were exceedingly cruel not to help us. And therefore, because of that, we do not want to have any connection to those types of men. However, the women who did nothing wrong, it is allowed. And for that reason, David, in fact, is fit to marry a Jewish woman, and potentially, as we'll see in the future, will become the next king of Israel.